The number of children persistently missing school over the last decade has almost doubled. It's a huge rise, and according to our fact-check team's analysis, this hasn't been a creeping trend. There is one major turning point: the pandemic. Let's do some background. Every school day consists of a morning and an afternoon session. The Department for Education classifies students as persistently absent if they miss 10% of all school sessions. Now, back in 2014, about 10% of children fell into this category. But this bar is a sizable chunk. That bar represents 700,000 to 800,000 children. That level stays pretty consistent over the next couple of years. Then the pandemic hits. Remember the chaos of school closures, homeschooling. So actually, the best indicator of the pandemic effect is the first full school year after COVID, 2022. All of a sudden, almost a quarter of all pupils persistently absent this year. That is 1.6 million children. The numbers have fallen from that peak, but last year, it was still just shy of 20%. This is 1.4 million children persistently missing school, and it's almost double the pre-pandemic average. It's also an issue that disproportionately affects children from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. 32% of pupils getting free school meals are persistently absent. This falls to 15% to non-free school meal pupils. Now, of course, there are many, many reasons for absences. The government logs all of them. And drilling down into this data shows some interesting results. The biggest reason, both pre and post-pandemic, is illness. That accounted for 58% of absences a decade ago. Last year, about 52%. Unauthorised holidays, taking your kids away in term time without permission, maybe getting a fine. It was 6% a decade ago. Not that dissimilar last year. But the biggest increase is this category: unauthorised other reasons. In other words, it's not clear why the child is absent. It accounted for 14% of missed sessions in 2013. Now, this one nebulous category is 22% of all absences. Again, this is thousands upon thousands of children missing school, potentially harming their chances of future success. And according to the government's own data, without clear reason. Today, the government is pledging £15 million to tackle absenteeism. But while COVID may have been the trigger point for the level we see today, the reasons behind it are varied, complex, and, according to the government's own data, ill-defined.
Paul McNamara there. Well, earlier I spoke to the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, who was visiting a secondary school in Ipswich, Chantry Academy. And I asked her first why boosting attendance is such a priority for this new government.
Yeah, we're working with schools to address this, and it's the children who are regularly not in school that cause me the biggest concern, because that's where you do see a big impact in terms of academic outcomes, what they're able to achieve in their exams, but also from the evidence that we've pulled together, the lifelong impact it has in terms of earnings as well. The school I've been at today are doing some fantastic work to make sure that children are getting the support that they need to get into school and to be at school. But alongside that, we know that there's more that government has to do. So that's why it's so important that the additional investment that we're putting in to attendance mentors is about putting that extra help in place to support young people and families, because this is a complex issue. There are quite a few drivers of it, and certainly mental health support is one area where we will make more progress, because that's part of the challenge that we're facing at the moment.
So just briefly, in terms of what you do know about why some of these children are persistently absent, what are the things that concern you most?
There's a range of factors. Often it's what's going on at home. It's also, for example, mental health issues that children and young people are facing, or in their wider family. And also, coming out of the pandemic, we know that with that disruption to children's education, it's really important that they're supported into regular patterns of being in school. The problems were already there before the pandemic. They've got worse.
In February, polling by the Centre for Social Justice showed that 3 in 10 parents agreed that the pandemic showed them it's not essential for children to attend school every day. That is a really significant shift, a break in the contract, if you like, between parents and education. How do you change that?
Look, it is a real cause for concern. I've been clear that alongside government, parents have responsibilities too, to make sure that they are backing schools, supporting young people. But I also want us to be doing more as a government to make it make schools welcoming, supportive environments. And certainly the school I've been at here today is doing a tremendous job and has been really making some progress, and often quite challenging circumstances where young people and their families often are having a pretty hard time of it, and doing everything they can to overcome some of those barriers.
But
and that's
what do you directly say? What do you directly say to parents who are saying in this survey the kids don't need to go to school every day?
Well, I completely reject that, because, parents do have responsibilities alongside government and alongside schools. And my message to parents is that if children are regularly not in school, that will have an impact on how well they're able to do in their exams. That has consequences all their lives long.
A third of all children on free school meals are persistently absent. Poverty is a huge issue here, isn't it?
We've got to pull together that work across government. I am absolutely determined that we will drive down the numbers of children growing up in poverty.
But there's an easy, quick thing that you could do now, isn't there? We know campaigners across the country say ending the two-child benefit limit would immediately help hundreds of thousands of children. We know 1.6 million children are affected by it, and a survey earlier this year had hundreds of families say things like, we're not able to send the children to school every day because they can't afford shoes, that children were giving up PE because they couldn't afford kit.
Look, we have seen big increases in the number of children growing up in poverty under the last Conservative government. We are determined to make progress on this. Of course, we would love to go further and faster, but I think everyone recognises the really dire fiscal inheritance that the last government left behind. But that isn't stopping us taking action now. We'll be acting to limit the number of branded items that schools can insist young people have to wear, cutting the cost to parents, rolling out breakfast clubs in all of our primary schools to make sure children are getting a great start to the day, and an expansion of nursery classes within primary schools.
And I will move on from this, but, I'm really interested in this. You grew up in poverty. You know how limiting poverty can be. How disappointed on a personal level are you that the government can't move on this right now?
During my childhood, I spent periods of time where it was pretty tough. I know how growing up in poverty makes you feel. I know how the impact it has on families right now. It's why I'm in politics. It's what we are determined to change. It is the moral cause of Labour governments to bring down the numbers of children growing up in poverty.
OK, a lot of your plans in education rely on the money you're hoping to make out of ending VAT breaks on private schools. And you recently tweeted out, our state schools need teachers more than private schools need embossed stationery. Do you regret that? People described it as snippy, a cheap shot, the absolute epitome of the politics of envy.
This is a straightforward question of priorities. We are ending the tax breaks that private schools enjoy to put money into our state schools, where the vast majority of children go, where the vast majority of your viewers will be sending their children to school. And what they want to know is that they've got a government on their side taking the action to get more teachers into our classrooms, more mental health support, and much more besides.
Bridget Phillipson, thanks very much for talking to us today.
Thank you.